Well, hello again. It's good to be back with you. It's good to be talking about the Bible again with you. I'm so glad we get to talk about the Bible, even if we can only do it over the internet and video and on TV and those sorts of things. I really do wish we could do it in person. I miss you guys. I hope to see you guys again soon, but we'll have to settle for this for now, and we'll be glad for what we have, right? Okay. Well, let's open up our Bibles again. Let's go to 1 Kings. We're in the same book that we were in last week. Remember last week, in last week's video, we talked about Jeroboam and Rehoboam. But more importantly, we talked about the split. The big split in Israel, where they had the northern kingdom, which kept the name Israel, and that was the one that Jeroboam took over. He was their first king, and remember, their whole thing was they were not very good, and they kept on not being very good. They got worse and worse and worse, and they just did all sorts of bad stuff. We're going to talk about them a lot today. And then there was the other kingdom, the southern kingdom, called Judah, and that was the one that God kept in David and Solomon's family. He gave it to Solomon's son Rehoboam, but he only gave him one tribe, right? And the whole reason for that was Solomon did not do very good in his later years. Rehoboam didn't do good either, but God made a promise to David, and that kingdom was going to stay there, and eventually out of that kingdom we'd have some good kings and some bad kings, but eventually out of that kingdom we'd have Jesus. Well, let's go back to the northern kingdom, Israel, and Israel just keeps on being bad. They keep on doing things and doing things and doing things that they really shouldn't be doing. They're worshiping false gods. They're making idols and building temples to these gods. And you remember how hard God was on Jeroboam last week? You remember that? He said, "You've done nothing right. You did all sorts of bad stuff, and I'm not going to give you the kingdom anymore." He gave it to somebody else. Well, that kept on happening, and it kept on getting worse, and it kept on getting worse, and eventually it gets to this guy named Omni. And then Omni had a son, and his son was named Ahab, and Ahab is the king that we're going to talk about today. Let's open up to, let's just read one quick verse out of chapter 17. So there was this guy named Elijah. He says, "As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, surely there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word." And what he means there is that it's not going to rain. There's not going to be any more water coming into Israel unless Elijah says so. So there's this guy named Obadiah. And Obadiah was the right-hand man of Ahab. Remember, Ahab was the king. And Ahab says, "We got to find some grass because our horses and our mules and all of our animals got to eat. We got to find some grass." And he says to Obadiah, "Hey, you go over there, half of the country, and you look for grass over there, and I'll go over here, the other half of the country, and I'll look for grass over here, and then we'll get together and we'll figure out what we can do to feed the animals." But Obadiah had a secret. Obadiah was a faithful guy. He loved God, and he took care of all of God's prophets. See, Ahab hated God, hated him. He hated him so much that he wanted to kill God's people. Oh yeah, he wanted to kill all the people who were faithful to God. So Obadiah was probably being faithful, but probably keeping it pretty quiet too. And Obadiah was so faithful that he split up God's people, his prophets, into groups of 50. And he took them out into the wilderness and he put them into caves. And he hid them there where nobody was going to find them. All these different caves all over. And then when he could, because he was the king's guy and he had access to food and water and all that, he would take those prophets, those 50 guys in each little cave, and he would give them food and give them water, and he'd keep them alive. He was doing the best that he could. Obadiah seems like he was a pretty good guy. Well, so Ahab sends Obadiah out into the wilderness, right? Sends him out there, and Obadiah, it says in verse 7 of chapter 18, Obadiah was on the way, and behold, Elijah met him. And he recognized him, and he fell on his face, and he says, "Is this you, Elijah, my master?" And so he says, "What sin have I committed?" He's saying this to Elijah. He's saying that you're giving your servant into the hand of Ahab, that you're going to let Ahab kill me. "As the Lord your God lives, There's no nation or kingdom where my master has not sent to search for you. And when they said, he is not here, he made the kingdom or the nation swear that they could not find you. So in other words, Ahab is really trying to find Elijah. Why? Because he wants it to rain. He needs it to rain. They need to grow crops and have food, and they need to feed their animals, and they need to drink. The whole thing. They need rain. Everybody needs water. And then he says, he brings up something else, and he says, has it not been told to my master what I did when Jezebel, and Jezebel was the wife of Ahab. She was really bad. She was the one who got Ahab to worship all the false gods. She was the one who had all these issues with God's people, and she turned Ahab against God's people. So it says, has it not been told to my master what I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord, that I hid 100 prophets of the Lord by 50s in a cave, and provided them with bread and water? And now you are saying, go and say to your master, behold, Elijah is here, he will kill me. Well, Elijah says, as the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. So, what do you think Ahab would say to Elijah when he meets him? You think he'd say, oh, dude, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad you're here. You're an old friend, and I'm so happy. He doesn't say that at all. Ahab said to Elijah, is that you, O troubler of Israel? That's not a very nice thing to say. In other words, he's saying, you caused my kingdom all this trouble. You caused all this stuff to happen, which is kind of true. It's kind of true, but there's a good reason for it. God didn't want it to happen. Well, Elijah turns back to him and he says, I've not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have troubled Israel, because you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and you have followed the Baals. And those were the false gods, the Baals. Now then, send and gather to me at Israel at Mount Carmel, together with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of the Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. In other words, go get all of your false prophets. Go get them and have them meet me up on that mountain over there, Mount Carmel. Go get them and let's figure this out. Who is really God? Is it the God that Elijah serves, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Elijah, the God who would be Hezekiah's God, and Josiah's God, and Daniel's God, and Jeremiah's God, and Isaiah's God, the God who is Jesus? Or is it Baal? Is it the God of the Asherah, the false prophet, the false idol? Is it them who are God? What do you think? I know what I think. Well, what's going to happen here is Elijah wants to have a showdown. He wants once and for all to figure this out. He wants to show everyone in the whole world God is the only true God. Now, let me tell you something. You don't get a chance like this very often. Most of the time, when you're talking to somebody who doesn't believe in God, you don't get a chance to prove it. You get a chance to talk about what you believe, and you get a chance to talk about what the Bible says. And you know what? That should be enough. Because if the Bible says it, we should believe it. But most people aren't like that. They want proof. They want fire to come out of the sky. They want all sorts of things to happen. But Elijah actually got to do those things. Isn't that cool? He actually got to do those things. So, they're up in the mountain. And Elijah says to the prophets of Baal, he says, choose an ox for yourself. Prepare it first, and call on the name of your God, and put no fire under it. Then they took the ox, and they were given it, and they called on the name of Baal from morning until noon. And they said, oh, Baal, answer us. But there was no voice, and no one answered. Well, what was supposed to happen here was they were going to make an altar. They're going to put an animal on top of the altar. And it was just like they were going to burn this thing as an offering. Except they weren't allowed to put any fire under it. Their God had to provide the fire. Well, they're calling out, "Oh, Baal, answer us." And there's no voice, and nothing happened. And then they started jumping around. They leaped around the altar that they had made. And Elijah is feeling a little frisky at this point. Elijah decides, I'm going to poke a little fun at the prophets of Baal. And I love this part. This is so fun. He says to him, and while it came about at noon, Elijah mocked them. And he said, "Call out with a loud voice. He is a god, isn't he? Either he is occupied, or maybe he's gone aside, or maybe he's on a journey, or maybe he's asleep and needs to be woken up." He's making fun of them. There's no God. There's no Baal. And Elijah knows it. And you know what? The prophets know it too. They know there's no God. They know this is all fake. They know that they do this just so they can do whatever they want. So they can have all the money and they can have all the prestige where the king looks up to them and all that. That's why they're doing it. They're sinful. There's no God and they know it. And so does Elijah. And he's just making fun of them. See, there's no God here. But that didn't stop them. They cried with a loud voice. And then they started cutting themselves. They cut themselves. Not just with like little bitty, blades or something. They brought out swords. They brought out lances, which you used to stab with. And then there's blood just coming out of them. And they were really going crazy here, trying to get this fire to come out of the sky from this false god. They did everything. They did all the stuff that they had taught that they should do. And there was no fire because there's no Baal. There's no God. They're praying to nothing. Nothing at all. Now it's Elijah's turn. And Elijah serves the true God. So Elijah says to them, he says, "Okay, everybody come close. Everybody. All the people come close." So here's everybody in Israel. They're all gathered around this mountain. He says, come on, come close. And they get as close as they can. So he builds up the altar. He puts some stones down. It says he put 12 stones because of the 12 tribes of Israel. See, God never forgot that it was really 12 tribes. Even though he split the kingdom up, God never forgot that. So he says, just put the stones down. He puts the wood on the altar and he puts the animal on top. And then he says, "You know what? Bring me some water." There wasn't much water in the land, but they must have had some. So they say, okay, we'll bring you some water. And they bring a whole big jug of water. And he says, "Throw it on the altar." So they pour it out on the altar. Now, the whole idea here is they need this thing to catch on fire. It's whoever offering catches on fire that makes it the right offering. And here's Elijah putting water on the thing. Now, how in the world is that going to catch on fire? It's going to make it a lot harder. But Elijah wasn't done. He says, "Do it again. Do it again." And so here he is. They go and they get the big jug and they take the water, pour it on the thing. It's covered in water. It's dripping wet. It's like it's been in a bathtub. And if that wasn't enough, he says, "One more time." Good, one more time. And so they get the big jug of water, and it's a lot of water here. And they dump the water on top of the thing, and there's so much water that every piece of it is covered, every little bit. And the water is starting to collect at the bottom. And they had like a trench dug around it, and it fills up this trench with water, kind of like a puddle, So it starts to make a puddle of water. So you got this dripping wet animal, this dripping wet wood, and this puddle of water. And there was the guys over there, the false prophets, jumping around and cutting themselves and screaming and the whole thing. And they couldn't get fire at all. And here's Elijah making it 100 times harder to get something to burn. But you know what? Elijah, he didn't jump around. He didn't cut himself. He didn't do all that dumb stuff that the false prophets did. He said one prayer. One prayer. And it's in verse 36. It says, "At the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet came near and said, 'O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, our God, and that you have turned their heart back again. In other words, he doesn't just want God to burn up the altar. He wants God to make it known that he is God, and that Elijah is his prophet, and he wants God to take these people who he brought in close to see this thing and to turn them away from the false gods and toward the true God. Now that is a good prophet. That's a good guy. He doesn't just care that he wins the battle here, that he wins the contest with the prophets of Baal. He wants people's hearts to change, and he wants people to worship God. That's a good guy. Do you think God answered his prayer? Oh, you bet he did. You bet he did. Verse 38. Fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones, and the dust. That's all the dirt that was lying around. And it licked up the water that was in the trench. That means it boiled it away. That was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces. And they said, "This is the Lord. He is God. The Lord, he is God." So Elijah says to Ahab, "Go up, go eat, and go drink, for there's a sound of heavy rain coming." Remember, there was no rain. So now Elijah has proven to everybody who cared to watch that God is really God. And the drought is about to be over. They're about to have rain again. And so Ahab went up and he ate and he drank. And Elijah went up to the top of the mountain and he crouched down on the earth. He put his face down on his knees. And he said, "Go look towards the sea." And he went up and he looked, and the guy said, "There's nothing there." And he said, "Go back." And he said this 7 times. So, go and look, nothing there. Go and look, nothing there. 7 different times. But it came about on the 7th time, verse 44, that he said, "Behold, a cloud as small as a man's hand is coming up from the sea." And he said, "Go up, say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down, so that the heavy shower does not stop you." In other words, there's going to be so much rain that you won't be able to drive your chariot in it. And in a little while the sky grew black with clouds and wind, and there was a heavy shower. Ahab rode and went to Jezreel, but the hand of the Lord was on Elijah. And he girded up his loins and pulled up his pants, and got ready. And he outran Ahab to Jezreel. In other words, he had no chariot, no horse. He was just running. And there he is with Ahab getting off a jump start. Here goes Elijah running past him, and he beats him to the place. The only way he could do that was if God made him run really fast. So God is doing all sorts of things here to show us Elijah is the prophet of God. Elijah is the guy that you need to pay attention to. Elijah knows what God wants and what God is saying. It wasn't like Israel, who kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, didn't have some pretty big warnings that they needed to get their act together. They had lots of warnings. They had this great prophet telling them all about the stuff that they needed to do. And they just kept ignoring it. Because that's what sin does. Sin causes us to want to do bad things. And if we keep listening to our sin, we're going to keep wanting to do bad things, even if God does great things all around us. And you know what else? It tells us that unless God changes a person's heart, nothing is going to change a person's heart. Nothing. Because if burning up stones and water and all of that isn't going to change Ahab's heart, if outrunning the chariot isn't going to change his heart, nothing is going to change his heart unless God does it. So if you want a changed heart, which I think you should, and if I want a changed heart, we need to pray that God would change our hearts. But I think the important thing to remember whenever we have a changed heart is that we have to worship God alone. not God plus all the other stuff that we want to worship. And we have to worship God in the right way, not worshiping God and then, kind of doing what we want, or deciding we don't like this part of worshiping God or we don't like that part about it. We have to do the right things. We have to do what God says. We have to be ones who serve God. That's what it means to follow after him, not to get all the stuff, but so that we can be more like God. That's the important part about it. Well, we'll stop there. Next week, we're going to get out of 1 Kings and we're going to go into 2 Kings. Yep, and we're going to go back to the southern nation, Judah. And we're going to learn about another good guy and another guy who really tried to do his best, and that is Hezekiah. I hope to talk to you then next week. And I hope to hear from you. If you've got a question or you just want to say hello, be sure to do that. Have your parents send back a video or give me a call or send an email or something like that. And if you've got a question, I would love to read it and answer it in the next video if I could. All right, you guys. It's been good to talk to you, and I hope I get to see you all again really, really soon. Let's keep praying that God does good things in this time where we have to be apart, and that we can learn more and more about him. So when we come back together, we can encourage each other, and we can know more stuff to love God and to serve other people. All right, you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.